Welcome back, everyone. My name is Renee, and you are listening to the Body and Mind Strong podcast, where we talk all things life, fitness, and health. Today, we're getting into a topic which all my clients deal with one time or another, and let's just jump right into it. So, there you are, 3 days into eating, and I quote, clean. You are feeling good, even proud of yourself, and then it hits that intense, out-of-nowhere craving for chocolate or salty potato chips or something sweet and soft and comforting. You tell yourself, no, I'm not going to think about it. 10 minutes later, it's all you can think about. Sound familiar? Today we're talking about cravings, why they show up, why the just ignore it strategy almost always fails, and what actually works instead. Because here's the truth, cravings doesn't mean you're broken or weak. They mean you're human. And once you understand how to work with them instead of against them, they lose a lot of their power. Now let's just dive into why ignoring cravings make them louder. And so let's start with the biggest myth out there, that willpower alone should be enough to shut down a craving. Here's what actually happens in your brain when you try to suppress a thought or an urge. The harder you push it away, the more it resurfaces. Psychologists call this ironic process theory. Think of the classic experiment where researchers tell people, don't think about that white bear. What happens? The white bear is suddenly everywhere in their mind. Cravings work the same way. The more energy you spend trying to think about that cookie, the more real estate that cookie takes up in your brain. And there's a physical piece too. When you restrict too hard, like skipping a meal, cut out entire food groups, or white knuckle through hunger, your body responds by amplifying that signal. It's not being dramatic. It's trying to get your attention because biologically, it thinks you're in a surge. Yes, our bodies are amazing if you think about all it does to keep us moving. Anyways, so the goal isn't to silence cravings, it's to change your relationship with them, to notice them, get curious about them, and respond in a way that actually works with your body instead of against it. Now let's get into the tips. There are 6 ways to work with your cravings. The first tip, pause and get curious before you react. Before you reach for anything, take 15 seconds and ask, am I actually hungry? Or is it something else? Could it be stress or boredom or fatigue, which all can masquerade as cravings? Or how about it being a habit? Along with fatigue, habit tends to be one of my biggest ones for me. Now, this isn't about judgment, it's information. If you're tired, the fix might be rest, not food. If you're stressed, the craving might be asking for comfort, not calories. Naming what's underneath the craving takes away a lot of its urgency. Okay, tip number 2, let yourself have it without guilt. If you determine the craving is real and food-based, one of the most effective things you can do is simply allow it. Have the small piece of chocolate or eat that slice of pizza. Not the whole bar or the whole pizza, right? Just a small piece of it. Cravings that are met with permission tend to resolve themselves quickly. Cravings that are met with restriction tend to snowball into a bigger loss of control later, often at 9 p.m. standing in front of the open pantry. You hear what I'm saying, right? I think we've all been there. So moderation, not elimination, is the goal. Tip number 3, try the satisfying swap. Sometimes you can meet the craving with a version that still does its job but treats your body a little bit better. Craving something crunchy and salty? Try roasted chickpeas or air pot popcorn might scratch that itch. Craving something creamy? How about Greek yogurt with honey can stand in for ice cream? I once actually had a client take Fairlife, the chocolate Fairlife protein drink, and make ice cream out of it. And that totally helped her cravings with that. And it was a healthier version. So get creative with your foods as you think about how to swap things out. Now, the key word here is satisfying. A swap only works if it actually delivers that sensory experience you're craving. A rice cake is not going to satisfy a chocolate craving. And pretending it will just set you up to eat that rice cake and the chocolate later. Oh, and a side note here, check out the Protein Chef on YouTube. From what I've seen, he has some really tasty swaps, especially when it comes to the sweet cravings. Okay, tip number 4, pair it instead of replacing it. You don't always have to choose between give in completely or swap it out. Sometimes the answer is pairing, adding something to the craving rather than replacing it entirely. Craving something sweet? How about having a small square of dark chocolate with a handful of almonds? The fat and the protein slow the digestion, blunt the blood sugar spike, and leave you feeling more satisfied with less. Number 5, don't white knuckle it. Plan for it. If come Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. are your danger zone, don't leave that moment to chance. Build something into your day that meets you there. A piece of fruit, a planned treat, a short walk. Cravings you see coming are so much easier to navigate than cravings that ambush you when you're depleted and defenseless. All right, last but not least, tip number 6. Trust that your cravings themselves will change. And I see this all the time and is one people do not hear enough. As your eating patterns shift over time, your cravings will shift with them. This isn't willpower, it's biology. Your taste buds actually adapt to the sugar, salt, and fat levels you regularly expose them to. Yes, you didn't start off in life with certain cravings. You trained your taste buds to have them. So when you consistently eat less sugar, your palate changes and foods that used to taste, quote, fine, like a ripe strawberry, a carrot, and an apple, start to taste noticeably sweeter and more satisfying. Give it a few consistent weeks and you'll likely notice you're reaching for the fruit bowl before the cookie jar. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because it actually sounds good. This is really important to understand because it means the sweet tooth you have today is not a life sentence. It's a temporary set point, and it moves in response to what you feed it. All right, let's bring this all together now. So here's the shift I want you to take away with. Cravings are not the enemy. They're a signal. Your job isn't to fight them into submission. It's to get curious, respond with intention, and trust that the process of eating well will quietly change what you crave in the first place. So the next time a craving hits, try this order of operations. First, pause and ask what's really going on. Then, if it's a real craving, decide full permission, a satisfying swap, or a pairing. And finally, don't shame yourself for the process. This is how sustainable change actually works. Now, quick note before we close. Everything we talked about today is meant for the everyday garden variety craving, the kind most of us navigate on any given week. But if you notice your relationship with food is more complicated than that, if there's a lot of guilt, shame, or rigid all or nothing thinking wrapped around what you eat, or if you feel less like a craving and more like something you can't stop thinking about, please hear this. That is not something to push through on your own, and it's not a willpower problem. That's a sign it's time to bring in a professional support. A therapist or a counselor who specializes in eating patterns can help you untangle those thoughts and build a healthier relationship with food, one that actually holds up to long term. There's no shame in reaching out. It's one of the strongest moves you can make for yourself. All right, that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonates with you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and I'll catch you next time. And make sure you're doing at least one thing today that will get you one step closer to one of your goals. Have a great day.